all just need to keep calm. That's it! Don't, we're all gonna die!
If you've ever watched that 70s show and thought, man, I wish I could hang out in that basement, you're not alone. The whole series works because it feels like a real friend group. Messy, loud, slightly ridiculous, and somehow still comforting. But here's the weird part. A lot of what made the show feel natural was actually the result of careful tricks, strict rules, and behind-the-scenes decisions that could have sent the whole thing in a totally different direction. Characters weren't always what they became. Running gags had boundaries. Sets were designed like illusions. Even the timeline plays fast and loose in a way that fans still debate like it's a college course. So today, we're doing a countdown. 15 weird facts about that 70s show. You probably didn't know. Some are funny, some are oddly technical, and a few are the kind of, wait, seriously? Details that change how you see whole scenes. Let's head downstairs, take our seats in the circle, and start at number 15. 15. The show almost had a totally different name. Before that 70s show became the title that basically sells itself, the series flirted with names that would have changed the vibe instantly. Early titles leaned more youth rebellion than hangout comedy, and if they'd stuck, the show might have felt like a louder, sharper teen satire instead of the warm nostalgia machine it turned into. A name like Teenage Wasteland, one of the better-known early options, screams attitude. It suggests the show is about how awful being a teen is, or how adults don't get it, or how the world is falling apart. That 70s show does the opposite. It's an umbrella. It's inviting. It says, come in, look around, remember the carpet, the wood paneling, the stupid posters, the music, the hair. The final title also gives the writers freedom. It doesn't trap the show into being only about teen problems. It lets the series bounce between parents, relationships, jobs, school, and random basement nonsense without feeling like it's breaking its own promise. In a weird way, the title is the first joke. The decade is the main character, and everyone else is just living in it. 14. Point Place isn't real, but the vibe was engineered. Point Place. Wisconsin feels like a place you've been, even if you've never been within 500 miles of Wisconsin. That's because the show doesn't just tell you it's the Midwest, it performs it. The clothes look lived in, not costume rack. The houses feel like real family homes, slightly cramped, slightly outdated, and decorated by adults who stopped caring what teenagers think. Even the lighting helps. It's cozy, warm, and a little dim, like the sun is always setting at 4:45. And the show sneaks in little authenticity cues. The rhythm of hanging out with nothing to do. The way people roast each other without it feeling like hatred. The awkward politeness around adults. The we're bored, so we'll make drama energy. That's not just writing. It's a whole vibe system. The setting becomes a pressure cooker, where everyone's close enough to annoy each other, and far enough from big city distractions to keep the friend group glued together. What's weird is how little town you actually see. Point Place is mostly implied. Driveways, kitchens, the basement, the hub. But because the show's details are consistent, your brain fills in the rest. It's like the series built an entire Midwest town out of a handful of rooms and a shared emotional memory. Summer nights, cheap gas, and the feeling that your whole world is 5 miles wide. 13. The basement set had rules fans never noticed. That basement looks like chaos, but it's controlled chaos. The weird fact is that the space is staged like a magic trick. Every major conversation is blocked to feel casual while still being visually clear. The couch is the throne. The chairs create a loose circle, and the clutter is arranged so it feels random but never distracts from faces. That's why the basement always reads as cozy instead of messy. It's the illusion of a real teen hangout, engineered for cameras. There's also a social rule built into the set. Whoever sits where tells you their current status in the group. When someone's in trouble, they're slightly out of the core. When someone's confident, they take up more space. When someone's hiding something, they end up on the edge, half in and half out. You feel the shift even if you can't explain it. That's not an accident. It's how the show uses space as storytelling. And the basement is designed to make the friend group feel like a unit. Even when they're fighting, they're stuck together in the same room, in the same pattern, facing inward. It's basically a friendship pressure chamber. The weirdest part? You start to think the basement is real, like it exists somewhere you could visit. But it's really a carefully designed stage that tells your brain, these kids belong here, even when their lives are falling apart upstairs. 12. The circle shot was a technical headache. The circle shot looks like the easiest thing in the world. Friends talking, camera drifting, faces popping in one by one. But it's secretly one of the show's biggest technical challenges because it demands precision while pretending to be effortless. Everyone's timing has to be clean. Reactions have to land. Jokes can't overlap in a way that muddies the sound, and the camera movement has to feel smooth while staying locked on expressions that sell the comedy. What makes it weird is how much the circle shot becomes a language of the show. It's not just a gimmick, it's a signal. The moment the camera drops into that rhythm, you know what time it is. Honesty, chaos, conspiracies, and half-baked philosophy that sounds deep when you're a teenager. It's basically the show's version of a campfire. The circle is where stories get told, bonds get tested, and dumb ideas feel like destiny. And the shot does something psychologically sneaky. It makes you feel included. The camera isn't an outsider watching them. It's moving like another person in the group, turning to whoever speaks, catching reactions, letting you read the room. That's why those scenes feel so rewatchable. It's not just dialogue. It's a hangout simulator. The weird fact is that the show built one of its most natural signatures out of one of its most carefully controlled camera setups. 11. The smoke sessions were carefully faked. Let's clear this up the safe, boring way. Those smoke sessions weren't what a lot of people assume, and the production had to treat them like a balancing act. The show wanted the vibe, teenagers being edgy, feeling grown up, doing something forbidden, without crossing lines that would turn it into a different kind of show entirely. So the scenes are built on implication. The jokes happen around it. The camera focuses on faces, not the thing itself. The humor is in how serious they act about something that, when you're older, feels hilariously not that deep. What's weird is how the series uses the circle to create a kind of dream logic. The conversations drift. Everyone gets philosophical. They say stuff like they've discovered the meaning of life, and then someone immediately ruins it with a dumb comment. That's the whole trick. The show creates the vibe without needing to show explicit details. It's atmosphere as storytelling. And you'll notice something else. The circle scenes are often where character truths slip out. Crushes get revealed. Fights cool down. Plans get made. It's the confessional booth disguised as a hangout. So even when the topic is goofy, the function is serious. It's where the group becomes a group again. The weird fact is that those scenes are less about the smoke and more about the ritual. Friends in a circle, telling the truth, one joke at a time. 10. One cast member got in because of a technicality. Casting teen characters is always weird because Hollywood wants teen energy, but also needs actors who can handle long shoots, tight schedules, and big emotional swings. So you end up with a rule-bending situation where someone might be just barely in range for what the production needs. And that 70s show benefited from that kind of casting gray area, because the show's chemistry depended on actors who could feel young and still deliver like pros. Here's the strange part. When you're casting a group comedy, you're not just casting individuals, you're casting math. You need one person who drives chaos, one who grounds the room, one who throws curveballs, one who reacts like the audience, and one who keeps tension alive. If you mess up one piece, the whole friend group feels fake. That's why technicalities matter. A slightly older actor can carry scenes. A slightly younger looking performer can sell the high school vibe. The goal isn't realism, it's believability. And once a cast clicks, the show starts writing to them. Little habits become character traits. The way someone pauses becomes a running gag. A facial expression becomes a punchline. That's why the casting process is so high stakes. One close enough decision can change the entire identity of the show. The weird fact is that the friend group you love isn't just writing. It's a carefully assembled chemistry experiment, and the right person in the right role can make the whole basement feel real. 9. Kelso wasn't the original Kelso plan. Kelso feels inevitable now, like the universe created him specifically to say something dumb at the worst possible moment. But characters like Kelso often start as a simple archetype. Good-looking guy, class clown, the lovable idiot. Then the actor shows up and accidentally creates a specific kind of idiot, and the writers chase that lightning. That's the weird part. Sometimes a character isn't found on the page. They're found in the performance. Kelso works because he isn't just stupid. He's confident. He believes his own nonsense, and the show uses that confidence as a comedy engine. When Kelso says something ridiculous, it doesn't land like a joke he's telling. It lands like a truth he's announcing to the world. That's why people laugh. The punchline is that he means it. The other secret ingredient is vulnerability. Underneath the swagger, Kelso is insecure in a way that feels real. He wants attention. He wants approval. He wants to be taken seriously, and he's constantly failing at it. That's relatable, even when it's exaggerated. So the writers start giving him moments that aren't just dumb guy jokes. They give him emotional beats, jealousy, pride, humiliation, and weird little victories. The weird fact is that Kelso's final form, the version fans quote, probably didn't exist at the start. It evolved as the show learned what worked, what audiences loved, and what the actor could do that nobody else could replicate. You can't manufacture that. You either catch it or you miss it. 8. Fez's biggest mystery was protected on purpose. Fez is one of the smartest long-running gags the show ever committed to, because the joke isn't just, he's foreign. The real joke is that the show refuses to let you fully understand him. His real name is teased, then yanked away. His home country is hinted at, then blurred into nonsense. He's a walking question mark, and the writers treat that mystery like it's sacred. That's weird, because most sitcoms eventually explain everything. They give you backstory, family, reasons, answers. That 70s show does the opposite with Fez. It turns the lack of answers into a feature, and that creates a strange effect. Fez becomes bigger than realism. He's almost mythological, like he fell out of a teen comedy sky and landed in Point Place with a suitcase and a smile. The mystery also protects the character. If you define his country, you pin him to specifics, and you risk the jokes aging badly in a very exact way. By keeping it vague, the show stays in the realm of absurdity. Fez isn't meant to be a documentary. He's meant to be a wild card who can say something totally unexpected and still feel like he belongs. And here's the best part. The show uses Fez's mystery as a social mirror. Everyone else is trapped in small-town predictability, and Fez is the reminder that the world is bigger, stranger, and more chaotic than their basement bubble. The weird fact is that Fez's unanswered questions aren't a writing failure. They're the whole point. The show keeps the mystery, because mystery is funnier than truth. 7. Red's foot-in threat had a secret limit. Red Foreman's threats are legendary, but they're also carefully constructed. The weird fact is that you can't just repeat the same line forever and expect it to stay funny, especially when it's a harsh, aggressive joke. The show had to keep the threat iconic while avoiding two problems: going too far or turning it into white noise. So Red's humor becomes a game of variation and timing. A lot of Red's funniest moments aren't even the threat itself. It's the buildup, the sigh, the stare, the pause where you can see him deciding whether he's going to be patient or go nuclear. The threat is the punchline, but the real comedy is that Red is always one tiny annoyance away from snapping. That's why viewers love him. He's the adult version of what the teens feel. I'm stuck with these people, and they're driving me insane. Red also works because he's not a villain. He's strict, but he's consistent. He's angry, but he's loyal. He insults people, but you still believe he'd show up if it mattered. That balance makes his threats safe in sitcom terms. You don't think he's actually going to do something violent. You think he's venting, and venting is relatable. The weird fact is that Red's catchphrase survives because the show treats it like seasoning, not the whole meal. They don't spam it. They place it where it lands hardest. And when it lands, it doesn't just make you laugh. It makes the room feel real, like an exhausted dad trying to survive a house full of teenagers with nothing but sarcasm and sheer willpower. 6. The timeline quietly breaks if you stare too hard. If you've ever tried to map out that 70s show like it's a historical document, you've probably felt your brain start to steam. The weird fact is that the timeline is flexible. Sometimes it behaves like real time. Sometimes it behaves like sitcom time, where seasons stretch and shrink depending on what the writers need. A year can feel like 3 years. A semester can last forever. Holidays show up when they're convenient. And by the time you reach later seasons, fans start arguing like they're in a courtroom. But here's why it happens. The show isn't truly about the calendar. It's about the feeling of the decade. The writers want the freedom to use 70s references, music, fashion shifts, and cultural moments without being locked into a strict week-by-week timeline. And sitcoms also have practical needs. Characters can't graduate too quickly. Relationships can't resolve too fast, and you need room for 100 little stories. What's funny is that the show's time slippage actually helps the vibe. The 70s become a mood more than a date. The basement feels frozen in amber, like these kids could hang out there forever, even as the outside world inches forward. That's part of why the series feels nostalgic even while you're watching it. It's already treating itself like a memory. So the weird fact is this: the timeline breaking isn't just a mistake, it's a strategy. The show trades strict realism for emotional realism. And for a hangout sitcom, that's a fair deal. You don't watch it to learn dates. You watch it to feel like you're back in that room. 5. The Vista Cruiser scenes were a production illusion. The Vista Cruiser feels like a second home for the gang. This moving bubble where secrets get spilled, fights happen, and everyone acts like they're on the verge of changing their life. But the weird fact is that most driving scenes in TV are a carefully staged illusion, because filming inside a real moving car is a logistical nightmare. You need consistent lighting, usable sound, safe conditions, and room for cameras. So productions build controlled setups that let actors act while the world moves around them. And that 70s show uses the car like a psychological set, not a vehicle. The cruiser is where characters can't easily escape. In the basement, you can storm out. In the kitchen, someone can interrupt. In the car, you're trapped. If someone says something awkward, you have to sit in it. That's why car scenes feel more intense. The space forces honesty, or at least forces people to react. The cruiser also becomes a symbol, the dream of freedom. Teenagers in a small town treat a car like a portal. A car means possibility. It means distance. It means you could leave. So even when they're just going to the hub, it feels like an adventure. The show understands that and leans in. The weirdest part is how familiar that car becomes. You remember it like it was a real vehicle from your life. But it's really a storytelling machine. A tiny room on wheels where emotions get louder because there's nowhere else to go. The Vista Cruiser doesn't just move the characters through town, it moves the plot. 4. The music wasn't just decoration, it was storytelling. Most shows use music to set the vibe. That 70s show uses music like punctuation. The weird fact is that a good needle drop doesn't just say, "This is the 70s." It tells you what a scene means. A song can turn a moment into a joke, make a breakup feel tragic, or make a simple hangout feel like the greatest night of your life. And because the show is built around nostalgia, the music becomes emotional shortcutting. You hear a familiar sound, and suddenly you're not just watching characters. You're remembering a whole era you may not have even lived. The theme song alone sets the tone. Loud, confident, a little reckless. It tells you this isn't going to be a delicate period drama. It's going to be messy and fun. And inside episodes, music often lands like a punchline. A serious face paired with the wrong song becomes comedy. A romantic moment paired with the right song becomes iconic. That's craft. What's especially weird is how the show uses music to build character identity. Certain songs or styles feel like they belong to certain people. The soundtrack becomes a background personality test. Who's trying to be cool? Who's trying to be rebellious? Who's trying to grow up too fast? Even when nobody talks about music directly, the show is telling you what kind of world these kids live in. And the music helps the show cheat time. A decade isn't just fashion and slang, it's sound. When the soundtrack hits, your brain goes, okay, we're there. That's why the series feels so immersive. The weird fact is that the songs aren't just vibes, they're narrative glue. 3. The show had to survive major cast shakeups. Sitcoms are fragile machines. You change one core piece, and suddenly the whole rhythm breaks. That's why cast shakeups are so weird to watch, because you can feel the show trying to rebalance itself in real time. That 70s show wasn't just a collection of characters, it was a chemistry equation. Certain people bouncing off each other created the magic. So when major changes happen, the series has to do something hard. Keep the same identity while inventing a new one. What makes it tricky is that audiences don't just miss a character. They miss the specific relationships that character created. Who teases who comforts who pushes the plot forward. Remove one person, and you don't lose one role. You lose a web of dynamics. The show then has to redistribute energy. Someone else becomes the chaotic one. Someone else becomes the center. Someone else becomes the emotional anchor. And that can make later seasons feel like a different show, even if the sets are the same. The basement is still the basement, but the vibe shifts. Jokes land differently. Conflicts feel different. Some fans roll with it, some don't. That's normal because you're not just watching stories. You're watching a social ecosystem. Change the ecosystem, and even familiar places feel unfamiliar. The weird fact is that shows rarely plan for this. They adapt. They patch. They experiment. Sometimes they find new strengths. Sometimes they highlight what was irreplaceable. Either way, it's a reminder that the best sitcoms aren't just scripts. They're living, breathing groups of people. And when that group changes, the show becomes a time capsule of its own behind-the-scenes reality. 2. Later real-life headlines changed how some fans rewatch it. This one is weird because it's not about the show's writing. It's about what happens after a show becomes a comfort rewatch for millions of people. Years later, when a cast member becomes associated with serious real-life controversy and legal headlines, it can reshape how audiences feel about the series. Not because the episodes themselves change, but because the emotional context does. Something that used to feel carefree now carries an extra layer of discomfort for some viewers, and it creates a strange split in fandom. Some people can separate the art from the artist and keep the show in the same mental box it's always been. A sitcom, a time capsule, a fictional world. Others can't. They start noticing things they never noticed, or they feel weird laughing at scenes because their brain keeps pulling in outside information. Neither reaction is wrong. It's just how nostalgia works. It's personal. The odd thing is that 70s show is built to feel like a safe hangout. It's warm lighting, familiar sets, jokes that repeat like rituals. So when something outside that world becomes heavy, it clashes with what the show is designed to be. The basement is supposed to be an escape. The weird fact is that this happens to a lot of long-running cultural staples. Eventually, real life bleeds into rewatch culture, and fans have to decide what the show means to them now, whether it stays a comfort, becomes complicated, or lands somewhere in between. It's the reminder that pop culture doesn't just live on screen, it keeps evolving in people's minds long after the final episode. 1. The pilot had a different energy, and the show had to find itself fast. If you go back to the earliest episodes, you can feel the show searching for its final form. That's not a flaw. It's a weird, fascinating sitcom reality. Pilots are test runs. Characters are close, but not fully cooked. The tone is almost, but not locked. Writers and actors are still discovering what the show actually is. And that 70s show had to find its sweet spot quickly. Goofy, but not cartoonish. Nostalgic, but not corny. Mean in a funny way, but not cruel. What eventually clicks is the show's recipe. The basement becomes the emotional center. The friend group becomes the engine. The parents become the pressure. The hub becomes the escape hatch. And the characters sharpen into their most iconic versions. The sarcastic dad, the fed-up mom, the romantic dreamer, the confident idiot, the mysterious outsider, the tough girl with a soft core. Once those roles crystallize, the show becomes effortless to watch. The weird part is realizing how much of what you love was discovered, not planned. Certain dynamics get emphasized because they pop on camera. Certain jokes repeat because audiences respond. Certain emotional beats become the heart because they land unexpectedly. It's evolution happening in public. So the number one weird fact is that the show you remember, the one that feels like it was always itself, had to earn that identity. It wasn't born as a classic. It became one by figuring out what worked, then doubling down until the basement felt like a real place you could walk into. Conclusion. And that's the magic of that 70s show. It's a hangout sitcom that feels natural, but it's held together by a bunch of weird little choices. Title changes, set rules, camera tricks, implied gags, soundtrack storytelling, and the kind of chemistry you can't fake. The basement works because it's staged like a friendship trap. The circle shot works because it makes you feel like you're sitting with them. The Vista Cruiser works because it turns driving around into a tiny emotional pressure cooker. And even the messy timeline works because the show is less about strict dates and more about the feeling of being young in a world that still feels small. That's why people rewatch it. Not just for jokes, but for the atmosphere, for the sense that you're back in a place where the biggest problems are crushes, parents, boredom, and whatever dumb plan the group cooked up in the last 5 minutes. Now I've got to ask, which of these facts surprised you the most? And which character do you think is the true MVP of the basement era?